What's up, guys? Okay, so we are back again today for another show on penny stocks right here on Benzinga. One of the biggest complaints we had on my last show was that we took a little bit too long to get started. And so I wanted to ask you all here, while we're allowing people to join the show, name some stocks you want me to look at really quick. We're going to start reviewing some stocks that you all would like me to see first. And then after we look at a few of those, we'll go into the stocks that I'm looking at for next week. And then we'll probably go back and, have some more call outs from the chat, if you will. I hope you all had a good week last week. It was a really interesting for me. And we'll review some of the trades and overall stocks that I got involved with last week. But another thing I wanted to do here is I wanted to look at a few of the stocks that we talked about in previous shows to see how they've been performing. One of the biggest stocks that I called out last week was BSQR. Now, we were talking about BSQR, and I actually drew exactly where I called this one out. I called it out right here at around 450s. All right, this thing this past week went all the way up to over $11 at one point in time for BSQR. And you can see that it's actually holding its gains pretty decently. Let me put the chart up here so you guys can see BSQR. You can see, again, I called it out right here at 450. And this one had a really great week last week as well. And it's certainly what I'm going to be watching. It's not really on my main list, but the daily chart looks really strong. Another one we called out was OCGN. And OCGN had one of the craziest rips last week. I'm going to clear out some of these technical analysis lines. And yeah, we talked about OCGN all of last weekend's show. We had a lot of talk on this one. And again, one of the things we liked was that the daily chart looked pretty decent. We had some nice support pullbacks and stuff like that. And we had a huge rip in OCGN all the way up to over 817 or 1870s. So a crazy big rip for that one last week as well. We also looked at VISL this past on the last show last Sunday, I believe it was. And I'll remove some of these lines here again. And you can see we talked about this one right here. So this one even pushed up about 20% after we talked about it as well. And of course, I'm not saying that the stocks I'm talking about in this show are just going to continue to go up. But what I am saying is that looking at the stocks that have good volume and then watching for nice pullbacks to major support on the daily chart can be a profitable endeavor. And it shows you just how important volume is. What's up, guys? Hey, the internet's been going well, Justin. I finally got Comcast out here. We had a few suggestions. They said it was my node that was struggling. And so apparently they're replacing one of the nodes out here. And my internet should be working okay. Let me know if we're having any issues today. How's the sound coming in for today's show? Let's do a sound check. Make sure the sound's doing well today. And so I'm looking at a few of these stocks that the chat wants me to call out. And yeah, I see CRBP from Justin. We'll take a look at that one. I also see INPX, and we can look at that one as well. CRBP is interesting. And what's interesting about this one, just to clear out some of this clutter here, what's interesting about this one is exactly what I just talked about. All right, what we have that looks interesting is we have a nice daily chart. We can see it's actually holding its gains for the most part for CRBP. You can see a previous level there. You can see it pulling back to a major level right now. And what we usually look for with this is, does it hold previous support? Does it pull back to major levels and actually hold those levels? And so you can see we're putting in higher lows for CRBP. And overall, the daily chart really doesn't look bad here. The biggest test for this one, I think, we're actually a little bit above 3 right now. The biggest test for CRBP, is it going to hold $3? I think $3, you can look at $3 here and see it was major support previously. It was major resistance previously, which usually turns into support. And so I think a lot of traders right now are looking at CRBP and they're questioning, is it going to hold at $3? And if it does, where's it going to go next? I think the natural pivot point for this one is, 350s and 4s being half and whole dollars, major half and whole dollar levels. But again, I think the question you have to ask yourself for CRBP, does it hold at $3? You can see we do have some confirmation even on the intraday chart from Friday for CRBP right there at 3. And so again, I think a lot of people are asking, is it going to hold here? And if it does, where's it going? You can see a nice little range at 350, and you can see why I'm watching for this specific level here. Analyzing this range, you can see a top here, a low here. And so I think that's the question we have to ask ourselves is it going to hold at $3? Well, time will tell. I don't mind the daily chart. But again, we're going to see if it holds at 3. Another one I see somebody calling out, they're wanting to look at INPX. They said INPX had a direct offering to private investors at Friday's close, and the price is still at $2. Do you mind looking at it? So the price for INPX at $2, the reason it's at $2 is that's the strike price, or that's the offering price is $2, I believe, for INPX. I know I looked at this one last week. I'm pretty sure the offering price for this one is sitting right around $2. Let me make sure, and I'll confirm that really quick. 1 second. Yeah, the warrants have an exercise price of $2 per share, and they're exercisable immediately and will expire 5 years following the date of issuance. So that's mostly why it's hanging around at around $2, is because that's where the exercise price is for INPX. And so we'll see what happens with it. It got some good volume this past week. Looking at it, the daily chart's not bad again, but I would want to see it hold at 2, and we'll see what happens for this one moving on. We do have some resistance above us that we could pay attention to. But again, I would like to see it hold at $2. And, obviously with that being the exercise price, a lot of people are watching for $2 as well. Let me see. I'm seeing ARTL, TANH. And we're going to do this for about another 5 minutes, and we'll let some people get joined in the stream before we move forward to other things. Yeah, ARTL, big rip Friday. You can see the move on Friday. It got all the way up to 367s here. The previous resistance is sitting right around 215. And so I think a decent amount of traders are watching that 215 level. And if we look at the intraday chart, we can see 215 right around here. You can see the high from there. We have some confirmation previously at 215. But again, I mean, looking at the intraday chart, I want to see this one hold at around 250. Here's 250 for ARTL. We had some movement Friday, and one thing I do like about Friday is that we did have some volume if we look at it. So we did have some movement, some volume, some gap ups on Friday for ARTL, but it was kind of a neutral sideways day. It didn't really do too much from that. And so that's what I would look to see if it holds over 250. That was kind of the low from Friday's intraday movement. And so 250 is what I would be looking at. And if it can't hold that, then we could look at that previous level I talked about. The only problem I have with this one is that the volume's been pretty light leading up to this point. But again, I think a lot of traders are looking to see if it holds at 250 and continues, because the biggest sign of strength in a lot of these penny stocks on an intraday chart is, does it hold its previous moves? And I think a lot of traders are going to be watching for that 250 area. Yeah, we looked at INPX. I've heard a lot of people talk about HCMC. I'm not much of an OTC trader, and so I don't trade OTC stocks very often. Especially OTC stocks that are less than 1 penny. They're not really my wheelhouse, if you will. They're not really my niche in trading, and so I could look at it, but again, it's not really my style for HCMC, and that's going to go with most OTC penny stocks. It's just not really my style. I'm probably not the best authority to give you advice trading OTC stocks, just because I don't have that much experience trading, stocks like this, especially ones that are less than a penny here. So a strong daily chart, and just based off of the amount of people that have called this one out, I've heard a lot of people talking about this one in my stream last week as well. And so just based off of that, there is some hype and some interest here with liquidity, volume, and hype. But again, it's just not really my wheelhouse, brother. Now, I know if you guys have been watching my previous shows here, some of the biggest, craziest movers this past week were cannabis stocks. And I'm not going to say I told you so, but I've been talking about cannabis stocks for the last 2 weeks. And I certainly made some good trades using cannabis stocks this past week. And we'll talk about it a little bit later. Let me know how you did with cannabis stocks last week as well. Yeah, for sure, Maxwell. And it's one of those things. I would rather be honest with you guys and say, hey, look, pink sheets, OTC stocks are not really my wheelhouse. I'd rather tell you guys I don't know, as opposed to trying to act like I know about OTC stocks when I actually don't, if that makes sense. And yeah, we got some stocks that we're going to be looking at today. While we do this, guys, make sure you hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. And remember, we day trade live on stream every weekday morning on my YouTube channel at Beginner Trading. YouTube.com/beginner trading. I'll post the link a little bit later. But the first thing we're going to look at is the top stock movers. And so we're going to look at the biggest movers from this past week first, and we'll get ready for that now. Okay, guys. So the first stock I really wanted to look at for the top movers from this past week is the one that everybody's been talking about. SNDL had some crazy movement this past week. You can see SNDL here had some major rips. And again, this is the one I talked about investing in over the last 3 weeks. I talked about SNDL a ton here, and for good reason. I mean, listen, there were a lot of movements in the cannabis space this past week. The whole market was talking about cannabis stocks this past week, from SNDL to ACB to TLRY, and just a lot of people were talking about cannabis stocks. There were talks of legalization. A few politicians said that they were going to try to make that push towards legalization sometime this year. And I know a lot of people are banking and betting on that legalization for this past year. We also had notoriously, Wall Street bets did have a lot of talks about pumping up SNDL, and a lot of traders consequently got involved with it after Wall Street bets brought it up. Looking at this one, though, originally my plan with this one was to invest for the long haul. And to be honest, I sold all of my shares this past week on this crazy rip. Now, the question I'm asking myself now is, how cheap is a rebuy? When do you guys think this one is a good cheap entry to continue longer term? Again, I was planning on investing in this one, but when you're up over 100% in a stock very, very quickly, it's natural and understandable that most people are going to take profits with that. And that's exactly what I did with SNDL. And we'll go over this a little bit later with the trade of the week. But SNDL is certainly one that I'm paying attention to. Again, looking at it, it pulled all the way back to $2. And so we're sitting right around the whole $1.02 now. And I think the question here is it going to hold at $2? And if it does, is it going to make another big rip in this upcoming week? Now, remember, the market's closed tomorrow, so the market's not going to be open tomorrow. The first day of the market next week is Tuesday for, I believe, President's Day is tomorrow, but I think it's President's Day. But that's the question. And I know here's the issue, though. There's going to be a lot of traders that are going to consequently be holding way up here. A lot of traders are going to be holding up here. And I know this because the same thing happened with GameStop. Wall Street bets talked about GameStop and AMC and pumped those up some. And then a lot of traders bought really, really high into some of those stocks, again, like GameStop, AMC, and now we have SNDL. And so I do think there's going to be a lot of traders that are holding way up here in a really extended way, refusing to sell, which is, I'm not going to say it's a bad thing, but we do have a lot of bag holders in this stock right now, in my opinion. I got a lot of criticism for taking profits when I did, and I sold the remainder of my shares at about $3.25. So I sold it right about here. And again, I got a lot of people upset with me, which usually signifies that we got some bag holders in there. Now, again, the question is, are we going to get some more buyers? Is Wall Street Bets still interested in this stock? And does the entire cannabis market as a whole continue to move forward? I believe those are the questions that we really need to be asking ourselves if we're looking to hold SNDL and trade it. But again, on a very short-term basis, what I'm looking at specifically for SNDL is right around $2. I want to see if it holds there and continues up. And if it does, maybe we'll get some cheap buys in here to hold longer term. As a whole, my overall sentiment with SNDL and cannabis stocks in general, to be honest, not really SNDL, but with cannabis stocks in general, is that eventually, I believe this year, we're going to get a push towards full legalization. I don't know how many traders have front-loaded onto that sentiment with stocks like SNDL, ACB, and TLRY. But I think when we get that breaking news that cannabis is legalized, we are going to get a bump in stocks like SNDL and stocks like ACB and TLRY and all of those other cannabis stocks. I think we're going to get some movement there. And so the question we have to ask ourselves here is, do we think it's cheap enough that by the time that happens, it will still be around these levels or over these levels? If we think it's going to drop down to $1, it's not really a good bet to say, okay, well, when cannabis gets legalized, we might get a bump. And so the question is, how strong does it maintain? And I genuinely don't know. It's something that we're going to have to wait and see. But with that, we're certainly watching SNDL. We had a lot of people in my chat room trying to pump this stock up this past week. I know they even diluted shares more. I believe the float on this one is about 1.4 billion with a B. And people make fun of me for always saying billion with a B. But listen, 1.4 billion shares, that's a big float. Is that going to be, is that going to restrict the volatility with this one? And again, I think only time will tell. Short term, I'm looking at $2. If we can't hold $2, I'm looking at, the 150 level and just kind of pivoting to half and whole dollars. And again, the question is, do we think this stock is going to maintain at these levels, eventually up until we get that push towards legalization? And if so, it might be a good bet. Let me check out on the chat here. We have an interesting sentiment here. Happy said the only reason those are high is they are up is because they are the only ones that Americans can access. Interesting dynamic, specifically talking about these cannabis stocks. Somebody else said we'd much rather own them than an actual producer with the inevitable huge decrease in cannabis prices. Yes, certainly. When legalization happens, I'm sure we'll certainly get a decrease in cannabis price just from supply and demand, more producers dropping the price of the stocks overall. And that's an interesting dynamic that we can see as well. We have Vivi, the bio queen, is holding the bag on SNDL. And listen, I'm not much of a bag holder. One of my biggest bragging points as a trader is that I'm a big wimp. I'm a big wimp in trading, and I take profits fast. And I usually don't hold very long with some of these moves. And I think it can be a very good thing and a bad thing at the same time. But yeah, I certainly got out of SNDL. Again, I'm looking in hindsight. I'm definitely glad I did. Again, my exit was right here at 325. But yeah, it's certainly what we're going to watch next week. I want to see if it holds at $2. I want to see if momentum comes back in just from the sheer amount of talks, hype, momentum, and volume we had this past week for SNDL. Yeah, I appreciate it. He said, proper sell, don't chase the market with this 100%. And that's usually my mentality as well. I don't really, I'm a very skeptical trader as a whole. I think you have different personalities of traders. One of mine is that I'm very skeptical, and looking in hindsight with SNDL, I'm certainly glad I am. All right, so moving on to the next one, guys, we do have FORD. Ford, looking at this one, Ford is moving some in after hours, and this is what originally alerts me to a lot of these stocks. First of all, looking at an intraday chart, we do have FORD here sitting at 720s, certainly having some volatility here. It's gapping up in after hours in the entire after hours session from 425s all the way up to 813s. And so this one is about a 95% move for FORD. A really big move in after hours, and this is certainly one that I'm going to be watching at the opening bell on Tuesday. Now, FORD did have some news that came out with it for it. It posted first quarter fiscal 2021 financial results, and revenue was up to $9.7 million for this one, which is an increase of around 15% from $8.4 million. So it did increase in revenue in the quarter. Gross margin improved as well, about 23%. Compared to the 20.5% for the 3 months prior to that. It did lose a little bit more in its operation, but net income was $1.2 million as well. So it had a pretty decent numbers that came out for first quarter results for FORD. And if we look back to the daily chart for this one, it looks like a really strong daily chart. Number one is that we have levels underneath this that we could play off of, but this one is up well over the highs of the past year. And looking at the lifetime highs, it's up well over those as well. The previous lifetime high prior to this big rip that we had was around 450. And so I think naturally, as a pullback level, we want to see it hold over that 450 spot. And I think a lot of traders are watching for that. But this one has just kind of blown well past any other previous historical levels. So again, the previous high was at 450. We are now at 720s, way up here. And so when this happens, guys, usually the only thing we can really do is look at short-term intraday levels. And again, we have $7. And the other thing that we can really look at is half, whole dollars, and quarter dollars. I usually pivot to that. It's my favorite way to trade off of major levels. I try to find a confirmed half or whole dollar level, and then I try to trade based off of that. And so the one that's catching my eye here for FORD is right around 725 or so. Now, it's not really a half or whole dollar, it's a quarter dollar, but quarter dollars are relevant as well. You can see all the confirmation here in after hours. You can see it's actually moving up to test that now before after hours closed, and I'm certainly watching 725. After 725, the next level above us is going to be this pre-market high at 813. If we do get some volume coming in, that is going to be the major level break that I'm judging strength from. If we do get a run up at the opening bell on Tuesday, the first level I'm mostly going to be watching is this 813 level. And then if we're looking for maybe a risk or support level underneath us, I'm looking at $6 as the most relevant one, being a big hold dollar, as well as extending this to the left. You can see it also held support previously right here in the after hour session. And so those are a few levels that I'm specifically watching. Again, if we get a run up at the open, I'm going to be watching 813s here. And if we drop down at the opening bell, if we're having a weak open, I do want to see it hold at $6. Again, good catalyst here with good first quarter results that came out, improvements all around for the most part. And so we have to look at the short-term levels. This one does have decent volume. And looking into the actual numbers for FORD here, we have a 6.3 million float. So it's a pretty small float. That gives us some potential, some volatility, some movement that we can watch, considering the float is so small here. Again, at 6.3 million. Market cap of about 41 million, cash of about 3 million, debt of 7 million. So it does have more cash than debt. I don't know about this one long term, but short term at the opening bell Tuesday morning, this is certainly one I'm watching, just considering the float, considering the volume in after hours, and considering the volatility that we had in after hours as well. Again, this one's up about 90-95%. A big rip and a big move. Let me know how you feel about this one in the chat. Let me catch back up with us here. Let me see. Not sure. Yeah, we're gonna go over that one as well, Tanvir, for sure, 100%. All right. So yeah, so the next one we're moving to after FORD is, let me find it, TOPS. Now, Top Ships is something that I've seen move consistently throughout the last few years. Ever since I got involved with trading, I've seen the shipping stocks move. The first shipping stock I ever saw move was Dry Ships, which is DRYS. If you've been trading long enough, you certainly know about Dry Ships. I don't even think it's a company anymore, but it certainly introduced me to the entire shipping sector with the volatility that some of these shipping stocks can put in. Now, I'm looking at some of these here. Tops, the catalyst for Tops is a little bit more obscure. What I'm seeing here is that in January, they said that they agreed to sell 100% ownership interest in 3 Marshall Island companies that they had a stake in. And then on Wednesday last week for Tops, Hudson Bay Capital reported a basically 1% stake in the company, reflecting 34,000 shares. And so we did have some interesting movement with the shipping stocks last week, not just with TOPS, but with SHIP. And the question I'm asking myself here is, are these going to hold their gains? Looking into Tops, we do have a nice move on Friday. We do have a big rip here. But some recent levels that I'm certainly watching short term are this 325 level number 1. You can see 325. It's kind of a middle ground of this support and resistance. Zooming into the chart here, we're watching 325, and I'm really pivoting, looking at a little bit more long-term levels here based off of this move yesterday. So we also have 350 here that we can pay attention to that is going to be relevant. It's right around where we are now. But we did have this big rip over $4 in after hours as well. Another relevant level that we could look at is this previous high from Friday, it looks like. So the high from Friday was about 390. Looking above us, we can watch for that. And so the question we have here is Tops and the shipping stocks as a whole going to hold these gains? I'm looking at 325s and $3, but the daily chart looks strong for the shipping stocks. The shipping stocks as a whole have been moving up all the way back from January to now. They've been having really big percentage moves in shipping. And I think this is something that we're certainly going to have to pay attention to in the entire sector, not really just one stock with TOPS, but again, we also have like SHIP and a few other shipping stocks that as of early January have been pushing up, making really big percentage moves, kind of coming to a climax here on Friday with this big surge in TOPS and SHIP. Now, again, the question is, are they going to hold these gains? And that's really what I'm looking at. I think on a short-term basis, we can look at half and whole dollars, but zooming back some here, we do have a lot of resistance above us from historical movement. And so, again, only time will tell what's going to happen to these shipping stocks. But considering the volatility we had on Friday, these shipping stocks are certainly something I'm going to be paying attention to at the opening bell. And so again, let me know what you think about these as well. Let me catch back up on the chat. 35% short float or short interest. Yeah, and that'll certainly make it more interesting. Again, it's something we've talked about the last few days with some of these crazy big rips. I think SHIP actually has a really big short interest as well. And so, you know, when a lot of traders and a lot of banks and institutions get involved on the short side, for some of these stocks, they do have potential to get squeezed up. Because again, I've said it a million times and I'll say it again, but the reason short float is relevant is because when you cover a short position, you have to buy those shares back because you're really getting loaned those shares as a whole when you're shorting. And so when a lot of short traders get stopped out of their positions, it kind of causes this domino-like move on the upside that happened with GameStop. It happened with AMC, and you know, it can happen to these stocks that have a really high short float interest. It's one of the things that Wall Street Bets is targeting here, and that's what they're looking for, is stocks that have a big short float interest. And yeah, I would certainly say SHIP with I'm showing 12% short float interest here for SHIP. I'll certainly say that's big enough to consider and watch. But again, the question I think you have to ask yourself is, are these going to hold their moves from Friday? And if they do, where are they headed? I would look to the pre-market high up here as the major level break that we can watch for. And again, only time will tell. We'll see what happens. Yeah, just to clarify to what Chris is saying, that's actually called a short squeeze. The domino-like momentum that comes from short traders getting stopped out of their positions and having to buy their shares back is called a short squeeze. I'm sure you've heard that term with the whole GameStop craziness that we've had. But again, you could certainly target on other stocks as well. And so that's something we'll look at with shipping too. Let me catch back up on the chat here. Yeah, GameStop. The craziness with GameStop is certainly historical, and it's a fun time to be in the market. I started following you recently. Keep up the good work. I truly appreciate all the information you share. Hey, thanks, brother. I appreciate the support, Miguel. Thank you, bro. TNXP, CLEU. Yeah, my man. Drives. Hey, listen, Drives was the first parabolic stock that I ever really saw. I looked at Drives. To put it into perspective, I don't even know if it'll show me Drives, and I think Drives had been diluted so much since then that, yeah, it's not even going to show it to me. But what I saw with Dry Ships, which was another shipping stock, Dries went from like $2 to like $120 and then back down to $2 in 3 days. In 3 days, that happened with Dry Ships, and it was the first kind of jaw-dropping moment that I saw with penny stocks where you see the potential with the small float and a lot of hype coming in there. And so, yeah, Dry Ships is certainly a memorable one. I know my man Mitch remembers Dries as well. Him and I used to talk about that one all the time. Hey, what's up, Eric? Hey, what's up, brother? All right, so to catch back up on the chat, we have a few people talking. We're gonna look at some more call outs from the chat. You know, after we get done doing this, we got a few more that we're looking at. Let me make sure. Oh yeah, the other one I wanted to look at, or my top movers, is SOS here. Let me pull this one up so we can take a look at this too. All right. But yeah, so the next one we're going to look up is SOS. Now, this one had some crazy movement. I believe this one was an offering. And so I think the offering price was right around here. You can see when it got hit with the offering. Let's zoom in really quick. You can see it got hit with the offering right around here, which just absolutely tanked the stock. I believe the price was $5 for the offering, so right here. So you can see it dropped right around to that level. But one of the things that you love the most is when the offering just gets bought up and it just continues. And that's what we have here with SOS. Looking into the numbers here, I'm not showing a float. Let me see if I can see the float for SOS anywhere else. Yeah, I'm not showing the float here. I'm showing cash of about 52 million, debt of about 580K. So good cash to debt ratio. But again, what's king here, and the reason a lot of people are going to be watching SOS is just volume. Look at the volume this one had this past week. It just had a lot of crazy movement. You know, it went from $4 up to almost $8. Then being so high, you know, when a stock gets to such a high price and there's offerings on the table, that's when the company's going to hit you with the offering, because that's going to be the most profitable time to. And so here you can see we got the drop, but again, it just kind of ate the offering up, and it's continuing to just squeeze up, making a big rip, moving a lot on Friday. You can see Friday it opened up around 520s, 550s, and then it just continued. It got all the way up to the 7s, and I think the most relevant levels for SOS here, I think the most relevant level is this 790, maybe $8 up here. These two levels, not only were they the high of the last few weeks, looking at this, they were probably the high of the last few years, which it looks like that was the high all the way back to 2019. So for the last few years, this 792, $8 level is the high of the last few years. And so this is certainly a level that a lot of traders are going to be pivoting to and watching for. And again, the question I ask is that if it moves up at the opening bell, is this $8 level, this 790, $8 level, is it going to reject? Is it going to hold? Is it going to reject? Is it going to break that level and hold a support? And I think that's what a lot of other traders are watching for as well. After that, we also have 775. That's something I'm certainly watching for here, right around 775, to see if we get that squeeze and get that break over there. But again, what I'm concerned about, even if it does break 775, it might reject this previous high. And so there are a bunch of resistance levels above us. But if we can get over those resistance levels, again, we've got some room that we can really run up here. And yeah, we're certainly watching SOS as well. Let me check back up with the chat. Somebody else had a good question. Buying early Tuesday. Yeah, certainly. We're watching it. And it ate the offering up and it continued moving up. And yeah, it's certainly one that we're watching being SOS. Certainly a lot of volatility, a lot of movement, and some really interesting levels that we can potentially play off of. I think that's what we really got to pay attention to, is these big levels, to see if we can play off of those levels. And somebody else had a question. Let me try to find it here. It said, I noticed your technical analysis is very similar to that of small mid caps. Is there any real difference? I mean, so I look at levels. The way my trading is, and again, it's all subjective. Everybody's going to be a little bit different. But I'm a levels trader. I'm not much of a trend trader. You can see the difference here. I'm looking at major levels. Just to zoom in, I'm looking at major levels as opposed to actual trends, just because with my style of trading, I'm not holding these for very long. I'm mostly a scalper. If you guys watch the stream, we trade live every weekday on YouTube, and we day trade live. And if you guys see my trading style with a lot of these penny stocks, it's a very scalping trading style. It's a very scalping, type of trading. And again, the reason I don't pay attention to the trend as much is because I'm simply scalping basing off of major levels. Now, you can see major levels here, but if we're looking at trends, we could look at more so like this. You know what I mean? And look at that trend and try to profit on these type of pullbacks. But there's a difference, and everybody's a little bit different. Neither of them are necessarily right or wrong. It just depends on how well you can actually manage those type of plays and those type of strategies. But again, it's not really universal. Everybody's a little bit different, and that's just my own subjective way of trading, if you will. Identifying major levels, and then obviously something that has been very profitable for me lately has been looking for major pullbacks and with some of these penny stocks that are moving. Now, again, looking at SOS, we're going to look at $5, obviously, but we're going to look at 656, most of the half and whole dollars leading up to this point, to see if there's potential there. And underneath us now, I think $7 is probably the big level that a lot of other people are watching. If we look at this, here's 7 here, and you can see, it's following that $7 level. It held support previously here. And so I'm certainly watching kind of this range right here, if that makes sense, to see if it breaks over these highs and then holds over these previous high of the days that you can see. So that's what I'm looking at for SOS. But again, everybody's a little bit different. This is just my own specific, subjective trading style. But again, everybody's a little bit different. All right. So, hey, what's up, Ann? Crypto play. P from Tuesday. Yeah, I'm not, let me see. I don't know too much about the actual stock SOS. I'm mostly looking at technicals with it. But yeah, the crypto market as a whole has been absolutely crazy. But yeah, so the last one we're going to take a look at is TRCH. And so we had somebody else mention TRCH, and it's certainly one that we're watching for here. I think this was an offering play as well. Looking at TRCH, we're going to zoom in here and see the daily chart actually looks really, really strong. leading up to this big break here, the daily chart looked pretty solid. There was a lot of holds, a lot of movement, and this pullback play right here looked to be very profitable at around 220, pulling back to that major support before bouncing back up here. Now, one of the reasons I'm watching TRCH is simply because it's definitely moving in the after hour session. And again, with my own style of trading, what I specifically look for is volume. I want to see volume, in order for technical analysis as a whole to work, you need buyers to step in at the major levels you're playing off of. It's one of the reasons why volume is so crucial, is because technical analysis is self-fulfilling. It works because other people think it works. And if you look at psychological levels, you need buyers to step in at those levels if you want your trading and strategies to be successful. And so when we have a big moving stock like TRCH with good volume in after hours on Friday, this is certainly one that I'm going to be watching just based off of the sheer volume we have so far alone. You can see we've got some interesting movement here already, some major levels that we can play off of previously at like $3. After this, we've broken over most of these levels over the last few days. But again, looking at the 15-minute chart, you can see how strong this one is. Again, what I'm really looking for, and I think if I'm going to swing trade this one, what I'm probably going to do is look for a pullback to $3. I think $3 up to maybe, this 315 level. It had a lot of confirmation in the last week or so. And so if we pull back to $3, I'm looking for that to hold and maybe give me an entry that we can bounce off of. But the other thing you got to look at is right around this 315 level, it's almost bouncing there a little bit already. And so the question is it going to pull back more? If it does, again, if it does pull back to 3, I might dip by that for a nice little swing trade that I can hold for a few days, anticipating a move up, depending on how long the move takes. But yeah, certainly watching these the pre-market high up here at 382s. Again, if we don't get a drop at the open, what I'm really going to be looking for is a move to test over 350 and then a move up there to break this pre-market high. Now, what we always want to see here, if we're looking for longer-term intraday strength, is we want to see it move over this pre-market high, pull back to it, and actually hold that level and kind of bounce off that level like that. So, it can creep up here and move back and forth, but once we break this pre-market high, we need it to hold. Excuse me. Historically, if you look at the strongest stocks, they're usually holding the pre-market high and continuing. And again, it's in hindsight, but this 382 level is certainly one that we're watching on Tuesday. We're going to be looking at that. And again, the question is, does this thing hold? Looking into the actual catalyst here, the only thing I really saw for TRCH was, I believe, let me see when this offering came out. On the 10th. So the 10th was on Wednesday. So on Wednesday, this one announced the closing of an underwritten public offering of 23 million shares of common stock priced at $1.20. And again, if we look back to Wednesday here, this one had this big rip up. And let me look at what type of offering this was. Common stock offering. 120 per share. And yeah, it kind of ate that one up and continued to rip up nicely. The thing about the offerings is that the company makes money from them. And so that money causes a bullish sentiment after the offering a lot of the time. You just got to be careful about getting hit with an offering mid-trade. But yeah, so the company made some money on the offering, and we got a nice squeeze up all the way up to here to the 3s. Looking at the fundamental levels here, or the fundamental numbers for TRCH, it's got a float of about 70 million. So it's not incredibly... it's not a huge float. It's not necessarily a small float either, though. It's right around middle range for a float. Cash of about 750K, debt of about 18 million. So a lot more debt than cash, which I don't really like. Obviously, not a good cash to debt ratio, but it does have some short float interest here as well. So we've got some shorts in here that could potentially get squeezed up, and I'm sure that's kind of happening some already. But again, $3 is the level I'm looking at mostly for TRCH, and if it pulls back to 3, I might load up on some shares. Again, I'm not saying it's actually going to hold 3, but if it pulls back to it being a major level, I might try to play off of that on a short-term basis. And so we'll see what happens there. So Free My Grandma said, dumb question, but what's considered good volume with the last-minute candle over VWAP? Okay, so that's going to be relative. For me as a trader, what I'm looking for when I say I want good volume, In pre-market, I'm talking about volume. Depending on the float, it's going to vary depending on the float size, to be honest. But when I'm looking for good volume in pre-market, I'm looking for anything over 1 or 2 million shares traded in the pre-market session. So for the entire session in pre-market, I'm mostly looking for like 1 to 2 million plus if I'm looking at good volume. If we're looking at it on a minute basis, for me, I want to see over 100K per minute, over 100,000 shares traded per minute. Again, that's subjective. Everybody's a little bit different. But just for my own style of trading, I'm looking for over 100K, preferably over that, though. The way I scalp is I'm looking for big volume. So I want to see a lot of traders getting involved with it because, again, going back to, like I said, you need volume to fulfill technicals as a whole. And so with that, I'm looking for, anything over 100K per minute. If it has less than 100,000 shares traded per minute, my hands are off. I'm not touching it. But as long as it can maintain decent volume like that, especially during market hours, we need that type of volume, then I don't mind trading it. But again, if it's dropping down to like 50,000 shares traded per minute, 25,000 shares traded per minute, that is a signal that volume's dying down, and it's certainly not good enough for me to target momentum with, if that makes sense. Yeah, and I do like this. There's no stupid questions. The only stupid question is not asking one. And the only dumb thing is not asking a question you have. But yeah, those are the movers that I have from this past week, or that I'm watching for this upcoming week. Again, we're going to kind of pivot to some chat call outs in a second. Let the chat call out some stocks that they want us to see and look at. Yeah, but before we do that, guys, we are going to go to the penny stock trade of the week. And I gave you a little hint of it earlier, but we're going to take a look at that now. All right, guys. So the penny stock trade of the week, let me find the banner for it, is SNDL. This is a trade that I called out. Listen, I don't like to brag, but I've been talking about cannabis stocks for the last 3 weeks. I've been talking about these stocks. And again, I love the fact that we had some politicians pushing towards legalization. And I was able to buy SNDL. I'll show you guys where I entered in this one. I was able to buy SNDL at around $1.20. And so I literally got in here at the $1.20s. And I was able to sell the rest of my shares at $3.25, making a really nice percentage gain. Now, again, I think this is more of a story trade, and we got my brother Mitch as a story investor and story trader, and this is kind of what he does. He looks for specific niches with like stories that you can exploit and profit from different dynamics in the market. And with the big pump, this is what happened ultimately with SNDL, and this is why it moved so much in a short period of time. We had the initial cannabis catalyst that drove up ACB, TLRY. We had some politicians, some Democratic politicians that said that they were going to push towards legalization this year in 2021. And then when that catalyst came out, Wall Street bets started to get interested in the cannabis place. And so that drove this thing up hundreds of percentages. And again, I was able to enter this one at 125 and ride this thing up to threes. I did take some profits above that, though. So I kind of, what I did with this one, guys, is I bought in here, I let it sit. And then once I was up about 100%, I started to take profits. And then when I saw some pullbacks, like I know I bought this little pullback to the 175, or maybe it was a little bit higher than that, but I would buy on pullbacks, let it push up more, sell on those pullbacks. And then if it drops too much here, just to show you the actual chart, this is where I got in. I would add on pullbacks and then sell into strength. And I guess if you want to take anything from this, guys, one of the most important things, if you're trading like this, you want to focus on selling into strength. You don't want to be selling into major weakness. That's not what you want to do. It's more so, of course, by selling into strength, you're going to miss out on profits, a percentage of the time, right? But with that said, if you take profits selling into strength, you're going to be ultimately more protected as a whole. And that's why it's a very kind of common saying, sell into strength, you buy into weakness. And that's certainly what I had to do here. We bought into a little pullback at the 120s. And as we started to drop here, we exited the final position at 325. It's certainly a trade that I'm proud of. But again, if you go back and you watch the show from last Sunday and the Sunday before that, I've kind of never stop talking about the cannabis market and with some of these stocks, because I did believe there was a lot of potential in these, and it certainly worked out for me here. Again, definitely proud of that swing trade. It's probably one of the best swing trades I've ever done. And again, the question I'm asking myself with this sitting right around $2 is this cheap enough for me to rebuy back into this thing? And to be honest, I really don't know at this point in time. I don't know if it's cheap enough for me to want to rebuy into it. I sold most of my position, or I sold all of my position, I mean, and but it did drop a pretty big percentage after that. And so it's looking low relative to its previous highs now. And again, the question is it cheap enough to me to rebuy back into this thing? Let me know how you feel about that in the chat. Again, the question is, do we think the cannabis stocks are going to rebound here? You know, do we think they're going to rebound? If we do, seems like a pretty cheap entry. But again, genuinely don't know. This one's got a really big float. I know some of this momentum was from Wall Street Bets initially pumping it up and from that catalyst. And so I think if we're buying into this, I would have to hold it for the long term. And the question I have to ask myself here is, again, where do we think this thing's going to be at right before the legalization announcement? When cannabis is legalized federally, whether it be this year or next year, where do you think this thing is going to be sitting at? I don't know enough about the company to really say, and that's something I'm going to have to delve into. But again, the last buy I had was at 125s. It's sitting at $2 now. That's the question I'm ultimately going to have to debate this upcoming week to see if I want to get back involved. We have Brian saying, don't. Hey, listen, I haven't done it yet. Like I said earlier, I'm a very wimpy trader, a prideful. I'm very proud of being a wimp in trading. And I think sometimes what can hurt traders the most is that they have these big drawdowns in their account from being too aggressive. You know, if you're too aggressive, you're going to have these big drawdowns in your account. And one of the things that I avoid is those drawdowns from being a big wimp in my trading. But nope, SNDL anyway, Canadian company. Don't. Yeah, for sure. DPW looks like wave 5. So we can look at TPW. Thank you for the $20 donation, Matty Ghost. Shout out to you, brother. Let me see if I can bring attention to that. All right, but yeah, that was the trade of the week, guys. After that, now we can look at some more stocks from the chat. I'm not going to be able to get to all the stocks that the chat calls out, but I'm going to do my best. All right, and so we're going to do our best to look at the stocks. The first one, I got to go with my man that donated $20. We're looking at DPW. Again, nice push up for DPW. I believe this is a crypto stock, if I'm not mistaken. Let me know in the chat if I'm right. I'm pretty sure this is a crypto-related stock, a Bitcoin-related stock. Let me find out more information on this one and what's been happening. But yeah, I'm pretty sure this one's running up as a whole. I know I looked at this one a few years ago, and it was crypto-based. They put out something on Wednesday that said they had $45 million in cash and securities on the balance sheet. Okay, so yeah, this one is up. Strength in crypto-related names after Tesla made that $1.5 billion investment. So strength in crypto as a whole has been influencing DPW. And again, I think the question you have to ask yourself with this one is, do we think crypto continues up? Do we think Bitcoin continues to move up? Because that is how this one's that's the sparking catalyst here for it. Sorry, I'm catching back up with the chat. But yeah, again, we have some interesting levels here. To remove some of these shorter term levels, we do have some previous highs that we can play off of. So pivoting back to some of these, we have like $5, which is a major level. We're sitting above that now. And so I'm looking to see if it holds on at $5. Above us, we do have some resistance that we can pay attention to, specifically at like 640. We do have some levels at 560, right around where we are now. If we extend this to the left, you can see we have some support here, some resistance right around from January at that 560, 550 level. And again, I think we can pay attention to that. We can also look at 550 underneath us here, and then the low from after hours. But so far, we're about break even in the after hour session. We had a big rip up from Friday. And again, guys, I mean, one of the things that I really want to teach you guys is about how I trade some of these breakouts and momentum. If I'm taking a day trade, one of the most common things I look for, team, is I look for opening neutral or weakness. This one had a neutral opening on Friday. Then we broke over the VWAP. We pulled back, And then a lot of traders are jumping in on this pullback, and you can see as the rip happened, the volume increased. And so there's some good trades to be had here. But again, I think the question you have to ask yourself with DPW is, do you think crypto is going to continue up? Listen, I used to doubt Bitcoin. I used to be a Bitcoin doubter, to be honest. I used to never think Bitcoin in a million years could get to six figures. You know, everybody got mad at me for saying it. And honestly, a lot of people were right. Bitcoin's one of those things that I certainly doubted in the beginning. But at this point in time, being at roughly 50,000, you can see Bitcoin here. I can't really doubt it anymore, and it's certainly more possible, you know, with it hitting six figures. Again, let me know in the chat how you feel about crypto and Bitcoin, because DPW is a crypto-based stock, and I do like the nice little trend. You can see it has a nice small trend moving up here. Looking at the 15-minute chart, or maybe not the 15-minute chart. Let me see. Yeah, so looking at the 15-minute chart, we do have a nice little range that we can see moving up here. And so the question is, does Bitcoin continue? And if it does, you know, where's it going to move up to? I think the next major level in Bitcoin is going to be at 100K. You know, obviously 50K is the closest one, but 100K is going to be the next major level that everybody talks about. And if we look at Bitcoin here, we're sitting at 49.20s right now. One of the things I just found out about crypto, to be honest, is that it moves the most during the weekends. To be honest, it's something that I really didn't understand before. I'm not super well versed in crypto, if I'm being completely honest. And so I actually had a buddy, Joel, from my chat just review some Bitcoin stuff. And there's a lot of interesting things with crypto as a whole. Bitcoin is kind of the alpha in crypto, right? So like Bitcoin moves up. Most of the other cryptocurrencies, especially if they use the same algorithm, move up in sympathy with that. But again, 50K is a major level that we got to watch now. The previous lifetime highs at 49.5. So 50K, and then obviously the big one is 100K, six figures. And I know everybody's watching for those right now. Crypto is too volatile, too anonymous, not centralized, not really good factors to be a legit currency. Yeah, certainly. I mean, as a currency, I don't know about Bitcoin. Like here's the reality, right? It's not a reasonable currency, right? When one coin costs 50K and you got to break it up into a million pieces, as like a pure currency, it's not the greatest. It's way too volatile, to be honest, to be a regular currency. But when you understand as a whole where that is heading, I don't think it's a terrible investment as a whole. But again, not the most well versed in it, and kind of from the outside looking in, if you will. Yeah, Joel's pretty good from the chat. Yeah, he helped me out a ton. Taught me a lot of different stuff about it. So, all right, I'm looking at the chat. We're going to try to go over some of these. We have just a heads up, guys. If y'all are mentioning like actual pink sheet penny stocks, I'm not going to really be able to tell you much about it. I can look at the long-term daily chart, but I'm not much of a penny stock trader. I think if we're looking at INND, I saw somebody mention this one. If we're looking at INND, 50 cents is the level, I think. 50 cents, a lot of confirmation at 50 cents here. And so that's what I would watch for if I was looking at it. But again, I'm not much of an OTC trader, to be honest. I'm mostly, when I say penny stocks, I'm mostly talking about NASDAQ listed stocks under $10. CLEU. Yeah, I saw CLEU move last week. To be honest, it just didn't hold. And that's the issue I have with this one, is that it just didn't hold. I'm not saying it's not going to continue moving up, but looking at this chart, I mean, it got up to the 10s. It's pulling back to support. Like if we look at the daily chart here, $6, it's kind of a big level, but it didn't really hold that. And that's the issue I have with it. Like you can see, I day traded this one a ton, but to clear these lines out, it just didn't really hold its gains. Now, it's still up some. It's up, let's see, from where it was at $4. It's sitting right around 5. So it's up around 20-something%. From where it was before this big gap, but it just never really made a second push. It never really held. I think if we're looking at the short-term levels, $5 is going to be kind of my line in the sand if I'm looking at playing off of it. Again, that was the low here, and underneath 5, it's kind of void of support and resistance down here. We're close enough to it now. We could look at 550 as well, being a $0.50, but 5 and 550 are kind of my line in the sand levels for CLEU, just because it didn't really hold its gains after that big gap up in pre-market last week. Somebody else is saying AYRO. We can look at that one here as well. I know this one had some volatility last week too, but To be honest, this one hasn't had enough volume for me to get interested in it on a day trading basis. Now, on a swing trading basis, it's a little bit more interesting. You know, we can look at this major level here at 950s. We talked about that level a lot. We're sitting right over $10 now. But if we can hold at 950s, maybe it's going to make a run towards 1150s. And I think that's certainly something that we can watch and pay attention to for AY or AYRO. But again, for me as a day trader, it's just not really my style based off of the volume it's had. And I know we're going to get some people that say, oh, well, the volume was great. Looking at the movement here, it was okay. You know, it would get volume spurts, but it just wouldn't hold volume like I really wanted to for a day trader. But on a swing trading basis, it looks interesting. I'll certainly say that. I don't hate it as a swing trade. Again, as long as it holds over this 950 level beneath this, and especially like $9 right here if you look at that. We already looked at SOS, TRXC. So yeah, we looked at SOS earlier. TRXC's got a really nice daily chart. I actually like this daily chart. Again, I mean, we're going to pivot to hold dollars here. $6 is what I want to see it hold over first. If it can't hold 6, we're going to look at 5. And if it makes a pretty big drastic pullback, like if it pulls back to 430s, I might buy it there just because based off of that level of extension, previous support, you know, previous resistance that turns into support around 450. If we pull back to 450, I might get interested in it. But if we're looking at a short-term basis for it, yeah, I want to see it hold over 6, and then we're going to pivot to 5. And even if, without even looking at the intraday chart, look at $6 right there. A lot of confirmation here, here, here. If we extend it to the left, you know, $6 just is a major level that has been following for the most part historically. So I would watch 6. VWAP sitting right around that level now. And so if it can hold 6 and then make a push, we'll see what happens at like 660 where that previous high is. So basically looking at this range is what I'm paying attention to for, let me show you the range there for TRXC. But yeah, certainly not a bad looking daily chart. I'll say that. Yeah, sorry. We're going to have to. Looking at TRXC, yeah. So somebody else is mentioning WKEY here, and so we can look at this one. Not the best volume for me, to be honest, for WKEY. Like I just said, I'm one of the crucial aspects of my own system is I need good volume. And if it doesn't have good volume, I'm just not as interested in it. Now, I'm not the most active swing trader, and so I'm not saying this thing's bad from a swing trader's perspective, especially like if we start to break 11 here. Like you can see 11 extending that to the left. Let me put this up so you can see it. Extending this $11 level to the left, you can see we do have some resistance right around there. So I would look at 11. You know, if it can hold at 1050, but it does look a little bit extended at this point in time with a lot of resistance above us. So for WKEY, it's just not really my style. It's too extended for me to swing trade it and not enough volume for me to day trade it, if that makes sense for it. So with that, not really my style. I'm not going to say it's not going to keep, I'm not saying it's not going to continue to go up, but just for my own specific trading style, it's just not really what I'm looking for. SENS. Yeah, we can take a look at SENS. Big move in the last few weeks here. And to be honest, you can see I've traded this one a ton. I've day traded this one a bunch. Now, again, I mean, okay, so we're a little bit extended up here, but we're also right around highs. So we're sitting right around 420 here now. And we didn't really hold. Looking into the previous charts here, or the intraday chart, $4 is what I originally pivot to. I'm looking at $4. We're sitting right around this 420 level. We'll see what happens at like 425, which is $0.25 level that we can pay attention to. That it looks like it confirmed there. I genuinely wonder if this one is going to continue here. It's right at a major kind of. It's at a make it or break it level. I'll put it that way. It's got 186 million in the float, a huge short float percentage, which I certainly think is helping this one. The short float's like 30% for SENS. And so with all those short traders involved, they can get squeezed up or squeezed out and push this stock up But again, I think we're kind of at a make it or break it level, being right around this 420 spot. Previous high up here at 435, and so we'll see what happens in that range. But the first thing we want to see is it hold at 4 and then continue up to it, maybe break 435s. But again, to me, it's a little extended for a swing trade, and so I don't hate it on as a day trader. We just need to get the volume to follow it up, and we'll have to ultimately see what happens. Not saying it's not going to continue, but I do think we're at some major resistance levels above us as well. Yeah, we'll look at a few more, then we're probably going to close it down, team. It being 7 o'clock now, or we'll probably just have this probably be our last one, team. I apologize about that. It's just I'm just now looking at the time and seeing, hey, time moves fast when you're having fun, and yeah, it's already 8 p.m. So, but yeah, XSPA, another one I've seen a bunch. I think I mentioned this one on yesterday's or on last Sunday's stream. The first level I'm originally looking at here on this daily chart is $3. You can see how relevant $3 is. I'm zooming in here. $3 seems like a very relevant level that has had a lot of confirmation historically. You can see all the way back here, we held support, resistance, and resistance here as well, even looking very short term. So $3 looks interesting. Again, it doesn't have a huge range, and looking into the actual numbers here, it's got about 100 million in the float, but it does have a decent short float percentage, and so we'll see if the volume picks up. Looking into the long-term chart, I don't hate it. It's kind of following this trend, and you can see the trend line here, which isn't really my style of trading, but you can see the nice little higher for XSPA. So it's wedging a little bit on the daily chart, but again, the major level I would look at is $3. We'll see if it can break over that level. We'll see if it holds at like 250 here, being a $0.50. So the range in between 250 and $3 is what I would watch to see if it breaks out of that range or the upside or downside. But again, only time will tell. That's kind of what I'm looking at now. But yeah, guys, with that said, in the end, guys, I'm not saying any of these stocks are going to continue moving up. Those are just stocks that I'm watching, and we'll have to wait. Remember, guys, the market is closed tomorrow, so you're not going to be able to trade tomorrow at the opening bell. It is going to be closed, unfortunately. But you know, if you want to join and check out our stream that we're going to be doing, we'll probably be streaming some tomorrow morning as well. It's either going to be tomorrow morning or tomorrow afternoon. So make sure to hit the subscribe button, guys. Click the bell, turn on notifications on the Beginner Trading channel. Here's the link. Go sub to our channel. Like I said, at Beginner Trading, we're just a resource and community for traders. I just posted the link to my YouTube in the description. And again, you can see youtube.com/beginner trading. We day trade live on stream every weekday morning, absolutely free. We're just a free resource and community in the market. I don't claim to be an expert or anything like that. We don't sell a course or service ourselves. We're just a resource and community for traders. And so again, go check us out at youtube.com/beginner trading. I posted the link in the chat. You can see the link here as well. youtube.com/beginner trading. And I certainly appreciate all the support. Run the like numbers up here. Hit the subscribe button. We'll have to be back next Sunday at the same time as always. I hope you guys are having a good Valentine's Day. You know, enjoy your weekend, your long weekend, and get refreshed. Let's attack the market on Tuesday. And I'll see you all then. Like I said, we day trade live on stream. Stream starts at really, it's been starting at around 6 to 7 a.m. market time, but we stream for about 5 to 6 hours. So come join us. We'll see you guys a little bit later. Have a good day. Hit that subscribe button right here on Benzinga. Click the like button as well. And yeah, team, we'll see you guys later. Have a good day, guys.